Hi folks, my name is Chuck Black. We're doing 52 weeks of Python in 10-minute or less lessons. What's that, you say? I thought you already did 52 weeks of Python. You're absolutely right. I did do 52 weeks of Python. In fact, I've now done 67 weeks of Python, etc. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that most of these lessons are 45 or so minutes long, where I explain everything in great detail. Some of you have said, gee, I wish you could do this a lot faster, and so that is what I'm going to do. What will we be doing in this class, you ask? Well, we will be learning a number of things. We will be learning to build something that looks like this in the end, where we have a Flask server, where we have user interface, both terminal-based as well as browser-based. We will be dealing with a database that we create and we store data in. We will be learning about using message brokers. We will be creating workers that can do things like port scans on hosts, packet captures on the network, trace routes to particular devices. In addition to all that, we'll be doing things related to networking. So we will be monitoring networking devices. We will be monitoring and scanning hosts, and we will be monitoring services. So we're going to do all of that in our 10-minute lessons. So what exactly are you going to learn in this class? Well, we have a basics module where you're going to learn about a dictionary, about a list of dictionaries, about how to do a function, how to do modules, which are different files, how to do strings and printing, how to do comparisons, that's if statements, nested data, enums and constants. We compare lists versus dictionaries. When we're done with that, we will look at some intermediate type stuff, which is the idea that everything is an object in Python. We will look at list and dictionary comprehensions. We'll look at generators. We will normalize data. We'll learn about tuples and sets as well as regular expressions. Then we go into files and we look at JSON, YAML, XML, and CSV files. When we're done with that, we will go a little bit through the development process, but you may be interested in this. We're going to talk about Napalm. We're going to talk about Nmap. We're going to talk about PySharp, and we're going to talk about Scapy. So we're going to do a bunch of networking stuff. Then you're going to learn how to do Flask, which is a web application service that is simple and straightforward to use. We're going to build stuff so that you can do things like this, discover hosts in the network, and store them. And we're going to store them in various areas. In this situation, we're storing them in regular memory, but then we graduate to do something a little bit more interesting when we store them in databases. Oops, I jumped ahead of myself. So let's look at Module 7. We're going to look at SQL databases, and we're going to look at Mongo databases. Before that, we're going to look at doing classes. That's object-oriented programming. So we're going to figure out how to do that. When we're done with that, we will talk about concurrency. That is multi-threading, multi-processing, async, I/O, etc. Then we're going to look a little bit at user interfaces, messaging using RabbitMQ. We're going to take all of your stuff and do Quokka at popular demand. We're going to talk about recursion and how that works. We're going to do unit testing. We're going to do a few topics on the subject of hacking, so cracking passwords, denial of service, and then we're going to do some stuff that's not Python that talks about Java and Go language. This is all from the Python 52 weeks of Python that I've already done, that I talked about in great detail in these lessons that you see here. And the data, the code itself, is available online, as you can see here, on GitHub. So we're going to be doing all of that, but in 10-minute lessons. So the good news is, if the 10-minute lesson didn't give you enough, you can go to the longer lesson and hear some more about it in there. So how are you going to learn? Well, this is showing the existing longer version of this, but there will be a playlist with 10 or less minute versions of each one of these lessons. I will be going through and re-recording them in short bursts of less than 10 minutes. You will listen to it. You will watch me explain about the code in this. And then, this is very important, you will write the code. You need to write the code or you're not going to learn it. The good news is I've already written the code for you. So if you make any mistakes, you can look at my code and fix what you have done. But that is how you will learn. You will listen, you will examine what I've explained, and then you will write it yourself. So just to reiterate again, there will be lessons that I create that will be less than 10 minutes. If you have questions, you can listen to the longer version and see if they're answered in there. These are shorter at the beginning, but then they eventually get longer as I talk about more things. So you will be able to go through all of this on your 10-minute version, and then if you have questions or you want to have interest in this in greater detail, you can look at these longer versions of the descriptions. What about the code, you say? Well, the good news is all of the code is available at my GitHub repository called Python 52 Weeks. This is the URL that you see right here. If you want to go to Chuck A. Black, you can see I have 3 repositories currently. Quokka was an original version of what I've shown you. Python 52 Weeks is what we've been looking at. Quokka Prime is an implementation that's actually running in the background on my system right now that is an extension of what we did in the 52 Weeks of Python. In here you will see all of the different modules and all of the different code. If you want to know how to clone it, go to this GitHub site and there is information about how you can clone it. You can find it online that's appropriate for your system. That's where you find the code. So where and how are you going to write this code? I recommend using an IDE, something like PyCharm. I have here PyCharm. It's the community version. You can just click on this. It is free and will always be free, so it's not like a trial license. So you can download that. It will download onto your Windows or Linux or Mac operating system, and you will be good to go. You can begin writing code. It will do things like color coding, special keywords. It understands syntax of Python, and it will help you in case you have errors. It will tell you what you did wrong. You can even run your code from here so that you can see immediately if it is going to work. Now, if you really don't want to do an IDE, or if you hate life or whatever, then you can potentially do something like VI if you are in an OS that allows you to do VI. VI at least is nice than other editors. Some old school friends of mine have used VI, and they even put VI into their own IDE like PyCharm. You can do that if you want. You can see it does some color coding. You won't be running it from here. There are ways to do that, but that is also an option if you like that. And if you hate life even more, then you can just have a regular text editor, which I just found out on Ubuntu. The text editor actually has knowledge of special statements like print, and it knows about strings, as you can see from the color coding, but you will have to save your file and then run it separately. So you can do it however you want basically, but the general idea, my recommendation would be to use an IDE such as PyCharm or whichever is your IDE of choice. So lastly, you may ask, on what OS should I be running this? Well, you can run Python anywhere, and you can run PyCharm anywhere that you like. I happen to be running inside a VM. You can see I've gone out of full screen mode and I have my VM right here. It's running on Windows, as you may recognize this taskbar down at the bottom. You can see I'm running VirtualBox, and VirtualBox I have a number of VMs for doing various things, and this is the one that I'm running. As we go further in the class, I will be showing things that are running on Ubuntu for doing Flask and things of that nature. So eventually you'll probably want to get there. If you don't understand about VMs or about Linux, then you may want to do that because those are used quite often in the software world. But it's up to you at the start. You can certainly get started on your own host operating system. Well, hey, that's it for this introductory session on 52 Weeks of Python in 10-minute lessons. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching and listening. See you next time.